Motown sold. Bet sold. Jet sold. SoftSheen sold to L'Oreal, then sold again a few years later to a different conglomerate entirely. Every Black-owned empire this channel has covered tends to end the same way, with a founder's name landing on a contract next to a number too large to walk away from. But 6 families never signed that page. Some turned down buyers with the checkbook already open on the table. Others watched an entire industry around them get bought out piece by piece and simply refused to follow. One of them has kept refusing for 145 years straight. These are the empires that looked at the money and kept the keys instead. Number 6. Sylvia's of Harlem. In 1962, a woman with zero restaurant experience borrowed money her own mother had to mortgage a farm to raise. Sylvia Woods used it to buy a 35-seat luncheonette on Lenox Avenue from a boss named Andrew Johnson, a man who had watched her wait tables for years and finally decided she had earned the shot at owning the place herself. Woods had come north from Hemingway, South Carolina during the Great Migration with her husband Herbert, and before that luncheonette, she was working a factory job in Queens she described as dreaded. She paid Johnson's loan back within 12 months. By the time Sylvia's restaurant of Harlem grew into the block-long institution it is today, presidents were eating fried chicken a few tables away from Sunday regulars, off the same menu, in the same dining room where Al Sharpton still holds his weekly leadership meetings. Harlem changed hard around her. Real estate on what is now Malcolm X Boulevard turned into some of the most valuable property in Manhattan, and developers came knocking more than once over the decades. Sylvia's granddaughter, Woods Black, put the family's answer on the record years ago. Harlem did not have to worry about them selling the property because it was never just theirs to sell in the first place. That line was not written for a press release. It came from a family that watched the crack epidemic hollow out their own block through the 80s and kept the doors open through it, feeding people who were trying to get back on their feet before the sun even came up, free of charge, because Sylvia rose early every single morning to do it herself. 3 generations of the Woods family still run the business today, and not one of them has ever taken the offer to walk away. Sylvia's son Kenneth and her grandson, CEO K. Deshaun Woods, now handle daily operations, while the company's footprint has grown into a national line of sauces, seasonings, and dessert mixes, 2 published cookbooks, and a scholarship foundation that has sent Harlem students to college for over a decade. Even after Sylvia passed away in 2012, ownership never once left the bloodline. And this past August, the restaurant threw its 64th anniversary breakfast free to the neighborhood, the same way it has every summer since the doors first opened on that corner. A recent behind-the-scenes look inside a single day in the kitchen shows why that loyalty runs in both directions, with staff who are not even blood relatives still treated and treating each other like family. The restaurant's guest list reads like a history of Black political and cultural power in one dining room, from Bill Clinton making Harlem his post-presidency home base, to Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, and performers from Aretha Franklin to Beyoncé, all treated the same way as the Sunday regulars who have been coming since the Johnson administration. Sylvia never framed the business as a legacy to protect for its own sake. She framed it as a promise, one her parents prayed over long before she ever borrowed a dime. And the family still repeats that the prayer is being lived out with every plate that leaves the kitchen. 64 years without selling is one kind of story. The next family on this list did something a little harder to pull off. They watched almost every other hair care brand their own customers grew up on quietly change hands to companies that had never set foot inside a Black barbershop, and they simply refused to follow the money out the door. Number 5. Luster Products. Fred Luster Sr. cut hair on 47th Street on Chicago's South Side, and his customers kept asking him for something to fix their scalp between visits to the chair. So in 1957, he mixed a formula himself and started selling it directly out of the barbershop, 1 bottle at a time, long before it ever had a name people outside that block would recognize. That early formula, called cream oil, eventually evolved into Pink Oil Moisturizer, launched a full decade later in 1967 as an Afro care product, and it turned into the single item nearly every Black household in America kept in a bathroom cabinet for the next 50 years. While Luster Products was building that reputation bottle by bottle, the shelf around it kept shifting under everybody's feet. Rivals with decades of history sold off to European conglomerates one after another, and Black-owned beauty was treated less like a category worth protecting and more like acquisition inventory waiting to be picked up cheap. Luster never took that route, not once. The company still runs its production, manufacturing, and warehouse operations on 17 acres in Chicago's Stockyard Industrial Park that the family has owned outright since the beginning, plus a second aerosol facility in nearby Blue Island. It now ships products into roughly 70 countries without a single outside shareholder anywhere on the books. Fred Luster passed away in 1991, and his son Jory took over as president and CEO, a transition the family has described as steady and deliberate rather than dramatic, consistent with a founder who Jory remembers as simple, straightforward, and God-fearing above everything else. Jory's daughters, including Risa Luster-Mack and Teresa Luster, now sit inside the business as the third generation, updating packaging and building a modern social media presence for a brand that spent decades relying on nothing but word of mouth passed from mother to daughter. When a Tyler Perry series loosely echoed her family's setup last year, Risa was blunt about the real version of events. Her family had been building this company since 1957, long before Black-owned beauty empires became a trending storyline anyone on television wanted to tell. Jory Luster once summed up the whole family philosophy in a single sentence, and it still hangs over the company nearly 70 years later. He said the most important thing they do is employ people, not chase a bigger buyer, adding that the employee population had shrunk as the industry changed, but that the people who remained still mattered more than a headline sale ever would. That philosophy has cost the brand some visibility, and younger shoppers sometimes wonder what the company even sells anymore now that heavy pomades have fallen out of fashion. None of that debate has ever translated into a buyout, because there has never been a Luster family member willing to entertain one. Almost 70 years in, Luster Products has never had an outside owner sign a single share, and the next name on this list nearly lost that exact fight from the inside. Number 4. H.J. Russell & Company. Herman Russell started creating his own jobs at age 8, shaped by a Depression-era Atlanta childhood, where nobody was going to hand him a career or a shortcut. He learned plastering by watching his father work, built a duplex with friends on a lot he had saved up to buy himself, and rented it out to help pay his own way through Tuskegee Institute. In 1952, the same year he earned his building construction degree. He turned that hustle into H.J. Russell Plastering Company. Back then, his entire operation consisted of an old pickup truck and a single worker. But he wasn't just starting a business. He was building in Jim Crow's Atlanta, a city where segregation tried to shut black contractors out of every major job in town. The real test came decades later, and it is the part of the story most tellings of this legacy skip entirely. In 1996, Russell announced he was stepping aside as CEO and handing daily control of the company to an outside executive named R.K. Segal, a move so unexpected at the time that the trade press openly called it startling, given Russell's conservative, reserved public image. Segal had reportedly turned down offers from larger firms to take the Russell job instead, and annual revenue did climb past $172 million under his leadership, with the company employing more than 1,500 workers including concession staff by 1997. But majority control never left the bloodline. That was locked down by contract, strictly by design. By late 1998, the two men hit a wall over the vision for the firm's future. So Herman Russell made his move and walked right back into the CEO's office himself. That single decision protected something the family clearly valued more than whatever short-term growth might come from handing the name to someone else permanently. Herman Russell eventually passed leadership of the company to his 3 children, Donata Russell Ross, H. Jerome Russell, and Michael Russell, who now run the business together alongside a wider family portfolio that includes an airport concessions company, a real estate development arm, and an entrepreneurship center built in their father's name. As of this year, H.J. Russell & Company reports roughly $250 million in annual revenue. But it was still fully controlled by the same family that built it from a single pickup truck on Atlanta's segregated construction sites. Russell diversified the business well beyond construction over the following decades, too, launching a beverage distributor and taking a majority stake in a Macon, Georgia television station. He even joined the ownership group behind 2 major professional sports franchises through the Omni Group, all while keeping the core construction and program management arm under family control. Herman Russell was fond of crediting his own father, whose small plastering business he had inherited for roughly $15,000 back in 1957, as the source of everything that followed, once telling reporters that his father had given him a kind of PhD in the art of saving and common sense that no business school could teach. Russell brought in outside leadership exactly once, tested it against his own instincts, and pulled the company back before it ever drifted permanently out of family hands. The founders of this next empire never even had to test that instinct, because they turned away the pressure to sell before it ever got that far. Number 3. Bronner Brothers. In 1947, brothers Nathaniel and Arthur Bronner started teaching cosmetology classes at the Butler Street YMCA in Atlanta, with their sister Emma helping run the room and keep the growing crowd organized. Roughly 300 people showed up to the very first trade show that grew out of those classes, and within 20 years that gathering had turned into one of the largest multicultural beauty industry events in the entire country, eventually drawing icons like Jackie Robinson and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. straight through its doors, and later signing a 10-year contract with the newly built Hyatt Regency in Atlanta just to hold it. What started as a classroom above a segregated Atlanta gym became a full product line, and the products became a company that has never once brought in outside ownership at any point in its history. Not during the wave of consolidation in the 80s and 90s, when so many black hair care houses quietly sold themselves to conglomerates, and not since. Bronner Brothers is still, in the company's own words, 100% family-owned and 100% black-owned, a claim very few beauty companies of any size, of any ownership background, can still honestly make after nearly 80 years in business. James Bronner now leads the company as president and CEO, representing the second generation at the helm of an enterprise that has expanded well beyond hair care products alone into Upscale magazine, a church congregation, and an international beauty and hair show that still runs 2 full events a year, drawing more than 40,000 beauty professionals annually. 3 names keep coming up whenever black beauty customers discuss this exact topic online: Bronner, Luster, and Dudley, because all 3 refuse the very same buyout wave that swallowed nearly everyone else on the shelf. That kind of consistency across 8 decades does not happen by accident, and it puts Bronner Brothers in genuinely rare company, even sitting alongside the other families on this list. The enterprise now employs more than 300 full-time and part-time staff out of a single manufacturing and shipping facility in Austell, Georgia, still privately held, still headquartered a short drive from the Butler Street YMCA, where the whole thing started, with a room full of cosmetologists and a folding chair. Every generation that has taken over leadership has repeated the same line in interviews, that the company operates with a long-term vision prioritizing quality over short-term profit. A phrase that sounds like boilerplate until it is measured against nearly 80 years of a family actually declining to cash out. But teaching cosmetology out of a segregated YMCA basement is one kind of beginning. The next empire on this list started even further from institutional power, built entirely inside a profession that was legally designed at the time to keep black professionals locked out of it. Number 2. McKissack McKissack. Moses McKissack was brought to the United States as an enslaved man from West Africa and put straight to work as a brickmaker for the family that claimed to own him. He survived long enough to pass the trade down to his own family, and by 1905 his grandson, also named Moses, teamed up with his brother Calvin to found the McKissack Company in Nashville, Tennessee, the beginning of what would grow into the oldest black-owned architecture and construction firm in the entire country. When Tennessee introduced a licensing law for architects in 1922, the state initially denied both brothers their licenses outright. They petitioned the state and earned formal architecture degrees anyway through correspondence coursework. And once the state ran out of legal grounds to keep refusing them, they became the first licensed black architects in the United States. The firm passed through the bloodline for generations after that, from Moses III to his brother Calvin, then to Calvin's nephew William DeBerry McKissack, and then to William's wife Leatrice after he suffered a heart attack and had to step back. In 1990, William and Leatrice's daughter Deryl McKissack started her own version of the company with a shoestring budget of just $1,000, consciously continuing a family lineage in design and construction that by then already stretched back 5 full generations. She grew it from a single Washington, D.C. office originally meant to stay within a 30-mile radius into a national firm with offices now in Chicago, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, and Austin. Today, McKissack McKissack oversees more than $15 billion in architecture and construction management projects nationwide, with the firm's name attached to the National Museum of African American History and Culture and the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial on the National Mall, both delivered by a company whose founder's own grandfather was once denied the legal right to even call himself an architect. Deryl still leads the firm today, running it as its fifth-generation owner, and her family's control of it has never once changed hands outside the bloodline across 120 years of American history. Cheryl McKissack Daniel, a cousin who runs the firm's separate New York office, once described the ongoing challenge as converting client contact into a long-term relationship inside an industry she has bluntly called very traditional and still largely run by white men. A description that has not stopped the family from landing work on the World Trade Center transportation hub, the Tappan Zee Bridge replacement, and the relocation of the Atlantic rail yards that made way for the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Almost 200 employees now work under the McKissack name across every office, and the firm has said it wants to bring more women and people of color into an industry that, by its own admission, did not think about company culture at all when Deryl first started the business with that $1,000 budget in 1990. 120 years of staying independent inside a profession that once tried to legally shut black architects out entirely would be the top story on most channels covering this space. On this one, it only earns the number 2 spot, because the final name on this list has been refusing the exit longer than most countries alive today have held their current flags. Number 1. E.E. Ward Moving and Storage. John T. Ward spent his early years as a conductor on the Underground Railroad, guiding enslaved people to freedom through Columbus, Ohio, using the same horses and wagon he later turned into a moving business once slavery ended, and that particular need, thankfully, disappeared. His son William formally founded the company in 1881 with 2 helpers, a single team of horses, and 1 wagon, and the U.S. Department of Commerce now recognizes it as the oldest continuously operating black-owned business in the entire country. It has run straight through the aftermath of the Civil War, the Great Depression, 2 World Wars, the Great Recession, a global pandemic, and 27 presidential terms without ever once closing its doors. The company stayed inside the Ward bloodline for 120 straight years, passed from William to his son Edgar Earl Ward, then to Edgar's grandson Eldon in 1945. Eldon never had children of his own to inherit the business, and when he retired to Phoenix in 1996 without any succession plan in place, his niece began managing the company and reportedly considered selling it off or shutting it down for good. That is the part of this story that almost never gets told. The exact moment the oldest black-owned business in America came far closer to disappearing entirely than to fielding any kind of acquisition offer worth taking. The Ward bloodline's run as owners ended there, at 120 years, not at the full span this entry is famous for. Brian Brooks was not a blood relative of the Wards at all. He was Eldon's godson, the son of the family's longtime attorney, close enough to the family that Eldon had personally served as his godfather for decades. When word reached him that the business might leave the Ward name behind for good, his own mother pushed him hard to step in and do something about it. Brooks hired an outside consultant to study a moving and storage industry he readily admitted he knew almost nothing about, then bought the firm together with a business partner, Otto Beatty, in April 2001 for an undisclosed amount, specifically to keep the company from being sold off to strangers or closed down permanently. 145 years after John Ward first hitched up that wagon, Brian and his wife Dominique still run E.E. Ward today. The company has never once left black ownership since, even though the family that founded it is no longer the family that owns it. Under their leadership, the company expanded operations into North Carolina, opening offices in Charlotte and later Raleigh. It became a repeat winner of National Van Line Service Awards. It grew into a genuine multi-million-dollar operation while keeping the exact same family-first structure that saved it from disappearing in the first place. Dominique Brooks has since said the family draws real inspiration from that streak, arguing that a business built on perseverance through the worst stretches of American history is proof anyone can push through a hard year of their own. Brian Brooks was 49 years old and helping run his own family's real estate business, working through an MBA at Franklin University in Columbus, when the call about E.E. Ward's future first reached him, and he has said plainly that he did not know the moving industry at all going in, only that he felt strongly enough about the length of the legacy to learn it fast. Motown sold, BET sold, Jet sold, SoftSheen sold. E.E. Ward Moving and Storage has now refused for 145 years straight, through crises that permanently closed businesses far larger and far better funded, because two people who were not even required by blood to save it decided the legacy still mattered more than any exit ever could. 6 families, 6 industries, one refusal repeated over and over across more than 3 centuries of combined history. From a Harlem luncheonette bought with a mother's mortgaged farm to the oldest Black-owned business in America, not one of them signed the page everyone eventually expected they would. If you want more stories about the empire still standing, hit the like button and subscribe to Black Status, and drop the next name you want us to dig into.